All right, so this will be a two-part series. Was King Saul related to the Apostle Paul? First of all, why does this matter? Because the Bible is all about covenants and curses. And marriage, of course, is a covenant between a man and woman under the directive of the Most High. Polygyny used to be a covenant between a man and multiple wives and concubines, but the Apostle Paul was anointed by God and wrote a new covenant covered by the blood of Jesus, and we are now redeemed through repentance and faith in Jesus Christ. So in these next few videos, I will break down why God chose Saul as the first king of Israel and why Paul was chosen by God himself to be an apostle and write 2/3 of the New Testament. Because if we look more into the life of Paul, we will understand why he wrote those laws concerning marriage and divorce. Okay, and we will also understand why polygyny is no longer biblical. Now, in part one, I will answer why God anointed Saul king over Israel, the 7 mistakes King Saul made, and why God commanded him to utterly destroy the Amalekites, and how these events relate to blood covenants and polygyny. Okay, because on this channel, I've previously stated that there are 5 major curses. Okay, go back and watch the video I did breaking down the 5 major curses. Now, of course, the law of Moses and the judges of Israel set the tone for Israel's intolerance of God's rule over them, which led them to pleading with Samuel to anoint a king over them like all the other nations. Now, prior to Samuel becoming a priest of Israel, Eli was priest over Israel and his sons were wicked. Okay, they slept with the women who assembled at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. And during the time of Eli, the children of Israel, they didn't ask God for a king to reign over them because they were living in lawlessness and the word of the Lord was scarce. Also, the children of Israel suffered many judgments from all the judges of Israel to that day. Okay, so they were tired of being judged for their sins, particularly the tribe of Benjamin, which I'll get into later. Let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 8. We're going to start off at verse 1. It says, Now it came to pass when Samuel was old that he made his sons judges over Israel. The name of the firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second Abijah. They were judges in Beersheba. But his sons did not walk in his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain, took bribes, and perverted justice. Then all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah and said to him, Look, you are old, and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations. See, they were being deceptive here. Okay, they didn't care about his sons, having dishonest gain and walking in the ways of Samuel, who was a righteous priest. Okay, they were being manipulative, and God is going to expose this shortly. Okay, let's continue. But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, Give us a king to judge us. So Samuel prayed to the Lord, and the Lord said to Samuel, Heed the voice of the people in all that they say to you, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them, according to all the works which they have done since the day that I brought them up out of Egypt, even to this day, with which they have forsaken me and served other gods. So they are doing to you also. Now therefore heed their voice. However, you shall solemnly forewarn them and show them the behavior of the king who will reign over them. All right, now before we continue, make sure you rate, comment, and subscribe to support truth. Let's continue. Verse 10. So Samuel told all the words of the Lord to the people who asked him for a king. He said, This will be the behavior of the king who will reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for his own chariots and to be his horsemen, and some will run before his chariots. He will appoint captains over his thousands and captains over his fifties, will set some to plow his ground and reap his harvest, and some to make his weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers, cooks, and bakers, and he will take the best of your fields, your vineyards, and your olive groves, and give them to his servants. He will take a tenth of your grain and your vintage, and give it to his officers and servants. And he will take your male servants, your female servants, your finest young men, and your donkeys, and put them to his work. He will take a tenth of your sheep, and you will be his servants. And you will cry out in that day because of your king, whom you have chosen for yourselves. And the Lord will not hear you in that day. Now pause. This is talking about Deuteronomy 28, the curses that are written in Deuteronomy 28. We know that these events transpired during the transatlantic slave trade and to this day. Okay. So King Saul, his life was only a vapor. Most of these things didn't happen during the life of King Saul. Okay, so God is not speaking in just a small snippet of time. Okay, the curses against Israel will come over the course of hundreds upon hundreds of years. So let's continue. Verse 19. Nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel, and they said, "No, but we will have a king over us." Okay, we are stiff-necked people, that we also may be like all the nations, and that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. And Samuel heard all the words of the people, and he repeated them in the hearing of the Lord. So the Lord said to Samuel, "Heed their voice and make them a king." And Samuel said to the men of Israel, "Every man go to his city." Okay, so now let's go deep into why God chose Saul from the tribe of Benjamin to be king over Israel. Now, Gibeah was a city that belonged to the tribe of Benjamin, which is one of the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay, this city was nearly turned into Sodom and Gomorrah 2.0. So let's go to Judges chapter 19, starting off at verse 1. It says, "And it came to pass in those days when there was no king in Israel, that there was a certain Levite staying in the remote mountains of Ephraim. He took for himself a concubine from Bethlehem in Judah. But his concubine played the harlot against him and went away from him to her father's house at Bethlehem in Judah and was there 4 whole months." Now, see, back in these days, they didn't go, again, they went by the spirit of jealousy, as I've discussed in previous videos. Okay, either that woman's husband or that woman's father-in-law needed to know her whereabouts. Okay, and if she was gone away for an extended period of time, they would accuse her of playing the harlot, okay, without presenting any evidence, because they were saying pretty much she was supposed to have her butt at home, okay? But if she went out, there wasn't any checking text messages or anything like that, or getting on social media. If she was away from her house, they accused her of playing the harlot. Okay, this is a part of the packaging of polygyny, okay, when you're dealing with concubines and wives at this time. All right, so let's continue. "Then her husband arose and went after her to speak kindly to her and bring her back, having his servant and a couple of donkeys with him. So she brought him into her father's house, and when the father of the young woman saw him, he was glad to meet him. Now his father-in-law, the young woman's father, detained him, and he stayed with him 3 days. So they ate and drank and lodged there. Then it came to pass on the 4th day that they arose early in the morning, and he stood to depart. But the young woman's father said to his son-in-law, 'Refresh your heart with a morsel of bread, and afterward go your way.' So they sat down, and the two of them ate and drank together. Then the young woman's father said to the man, 'Please be content to stay all night, and let your heart be merry.' And when the man stood to depart, his father-in-law urged him, so he lodged there again. Then he arose early in the morning on the 5th day to depart. But the young woman's father said, 'Please refresh your heart.' So they delayed until afternoon, and both of them ate. And when the man stood to depart, he and his concubine and his servant, his father in law, the young woman's father, said to him, "Look, the day is now drawing toward evening. Please spend the night. See, the day is coming to an end. Lodge here, that your heart may be merry. Tomorrow go your way early, so that you may get home." So the father in law, or this woman's father, the concubine's father, he was concerned for her safety. I mean, perhaps he knew that his daughter was playing the harlot because when she left her husband's place, she was out with her father for 4 months. Okay, so he probably feared that something was going to happen to his daughter, perhaps because a curse would come upon his daughter for playing the harlot. That's why he kept urging this man to stay with him, so he know that his daughter was safe. But let's continue. Verse 10. However, the man was not willing to spend that night, so he arose and departed and came to opposite Jebus, that is Jerusalem. With him were the two saddled donkeys. His concubine was also with him. They were near Jebus, and the day was far spent. The servant said to his master, "Come, please, and let us turn aside into this city of the Jebusites and lodge in it." But his master said to him, "We will not turn aside here into a city of foreigners who are not of the children of Israel. We will go on to Gibeah." Verse 13. So he said to his servant, "Come, let us draw near to one of these places and spend the night in Gibeah or in Ramah." And they passed by and went their way, and the sun went down on them near Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin. They turned aside there to go in to lodge in Gibeah, and when he went in, he sat down in the open square of the city, for no one would take them into his house to spend the night. Just then, an old man came in from his work in the field that evening, who also was from the mountains of Ephraim. He was staying in Gibeah, whereas the men of the place were Benjamites. And when he raised his eyes, he saw the traveler in the open square of the city, and the old man said, "Where are you going, and where do you come from?" So he said to him, "We are passing from Bethlehem in Judah toward the remote mountains of Ephraim. I am from there. I went to Bethlehem in Judah. Now I am going to the house of the Lord. But there is no one who will take me into his house, although we have both straw and fodder for our donkeys, and bread and wine for myself, for your female servant, and for the young man who is with your servant. There is no lack of anything." And the old man said, "Peace be with you. However, let all your needs be my responsibility. Only do not spend the night in the open square." So he brought him into his house and gave fodder to the donkeys, and they washed their feet and ate and drank. As they were enjoying themselves, suddenly certain men of the city, perverted men, surrounded the house and beat on the door. Okay, Sodom and Gomorrah 2.0 in the city of Gibeah. They spoke to the master of the house, the old man, saying, "Bring out the man who came to your house, that we may know him carnally." Okay, that's Sodomite spirit. Verse 23. But the man, the master of the house, went out to them and said to them, "No, my brethren, I beg you, do not act so wickedly, seeing this man has come into my house. Do not commit this outrage. Look, here is my virgin daughter and the man's concubine. Let me bring them out now. Humble them and do with them as you please. But to this man, do not do such a vile thing." Now, why did he say that? Because he knew and understood the law of Ecclesiasticus chapter 25, verse 19. There is no wickedness like that of a woman. Let the portion of a sinner fall upon her. Okay, you got to read the Bible and understand blood covenants. Okay, you got to understand generational curses. So this is why he said that. All right, continue in verse 25. But the men would not heed him, So the man took his concubine and brought her out to them. And they knew her and abused her all night until morning. And when the day began to break, they let her go. Okay, now notice they didn't take the virgin woman. Okay, the man from the mountains of Ephraim, he didn't let them take the virgin woman. He let them take his concubine. You got to keep in mind his concubine played the harlot. Okay, we already established that at the beginning of chapter 19. So this was also judgment against the concubine. Okay, but let's read further. Then the woman came as the day was dawning and fell down at the door of the man's house where her master was till it was light. When her master arose in the morning and opened the doors of the house and went out to go his way, there was his concubine fallen at the door of the house with her hands on the threshold. And he said to her, "Get up and let us be going." But there was no answer. So the man lifted her onto the donkey, and the man got up and went to his place. When he entered his house, he took a knife, laid hold of his concubine, and divided her into 12 pieces, limb by limb, and sent her throughout all the territory of Israel. Now, this was some kind of ritual. Now, I believe this man was a man of God, okay, because Israel played the harlot against God, and his concubine played the harlot against him. You see that? Verse 30. And so it was that all who saw it said, "No such deed has been done or seen from the day that the children of Israel came up from the land of Egypt until this day. Consider it, confer, and speak up." All right. So keep in mind, we're looking at the history of the tribe of Benjamin, which is where King Saul comes from, and which later is where the Apostle Paul came from. Okay, the seed line. All right, so this is going to explain why God anointed Saul king over Israel. But let's continue to chapter 20. We're going to read part of chapter 20. We're not going to read the whole thing for the sake of time. All right, so chapter 20, starting off at verse 1. It says, "So all the children of Israel came out from Dan to Beersheba, as well as from the land of Gilead. And the congregation gathered together as one man before the Lord at Mizpah. And the leaders of all the people, all the tribes of Israel, presented themselves in the assembly of the people of God, 400,000 foot soldiers who drew the sword." Okay, so all of Israel is getting ready to go to war with Benjamin because of the iniquity that Benjamin committed. Verse 3, it says, "Now the children of Benjamin heard that the children of Israel had gone up to Mizpah. Then the children of Israel said, 'Tell us, how did this wicked deed happen?' So the Levite, the husband of the woman who was murdered, answered and said, 'My concubine and I went into Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin, to spend the night. And the men of Gibeah rose against me and surrounded the house at night because of me. They intended to kill me, but instead they ravished my concubine so that she died. So I took hold of my concubine, cut her in pieces, and sent her throughout all the territory of the inheritance of Israel, because they committed lewdness and outrage in Israel. Israel disobeyed the laws and statutes, commandments of the Most High." Okay, so Israel played the harlot. So this thing that this man did to his concubine was strange, because when a man loses his concubine or his wife, he doesn't cut her into 12 pieces. That's why I say this man was a man of the Lord. Okay, of course, it was a ritual, and these are things that they did in the Old Testament. Okay, because you got to remember, once again, we're reading from the book of Judges. So Israel is being judged for their sin. Not only the tribe of Benjamin, again, but also the concubine who played the harlot. Okay, so verse 7 says, "Look, all of you are children of Israel. Give your advice and counsel here and now." So all the people arose as one man, saying, "None of us will go to his tent, nor will any turn back to his house. But now, this is the thing which we will do to Gibeah. We will go up against it by lot. We will take 10 men out of every 100 throughout all the tribes of Israel, 100 out of every 1,000, and 1,000 out of every 10,000 to make provisions for the people, that when they come to Gibeah and Benjamin, they may repay all the foulness that they have done in Israel. So all the men of Israel were gathered against the city, united together as one man. Then the tribes of Israel sent men through all the tribe of Benjamin, saying, what is this wickedness that is occurred among you? Now therefore, deliver up the men, the perverted men who are in Gibeah, that we may put them to death and remove the evil from Israel. But the children of Benjamin would not listen to the voice of their brethren, the children of Israel. Instead, the children of Benjamin gathered together from their cities to Gibeah to go to battle against the children of Israel. You see the spirit that's on them? Benjamin, the tribe of Benjamin, is just only one tribe among the 12 tribes of Israel. So they're willing to go one tribe, go to war against 11 other tribes. Not to mention also that this is their brethren. These are their brothers. Okay, these are not foreign nations. So clearly the Lord is not with them. Okay, but this is that spirit of lust and that spirit of greed, that spirit of death that's on them. Okay, it's verse 15. And from their cities at that time, the children of Benjamin numbered 26,000 men who drew the sword, besides the inhabitants of Gibeah, who numbered 700 select men. Okay, so this didn't include women and children. All right, verse 16. Among all this people were 700 select men who were left-handed. Everyone could sling a stone at a hair's breadth and not miss. Now, besides Benjamin, the men of Israel numbered 400,000 men who drew the sword. All of these were men of war. Okay, so 400,000 men going to war against 26,000 men. All right. Now, later on in this chapter, it would go on to mention how, of course, Benjamin got slaughtered. Okay, in the war against Gibeah, 25,000 Benjamites fell by the sword in just one day. So you got 25,000 Benjamites who died over sex, just like the 24,000 people who died in Israel because they played the harlot with Moab. Okay, I talked about this in, I believe, Numbers chapter 24 or 25, or somewhere around there. And they also killed the women who were not virgins. All right, I could go deeper into that, but that's probably another video. But at this point, Israel is concerned about their brother Benjamin because they want to keep all the 12 tribes of Israel intact. Okay, so the virgin women is like a premium. All right, they're trying to save them so that they can continue the bloodlines, because it's all about the bloodlines. It's all about keeping the bloodlines pure to the best of their ability. That's why they had to get rid of these wicked men who were perverted, because a demon spirit entered these men. Now their sons are going to grow up to be like them. That's why they couldn't spare the children as well. And they couldn't spare the women who were not virgin. All right. Because at that time, the purity, the sanctity of the woman was based solely on what she did with her body. Okay, and I already established fate of the Ephraimite, his concubine. All right. So in chapter 20, 11 of the tribes of Israel went to war with the tribe of Benjamin, and they nearly destroyed Benjamin. Okay, so let's see what else they do here in chapter 21. So verse 1, it says, now the men of Israel had sworn an oath at Mizpah, saying, none of us shall give his daughter to Benjamin as a wife. Then the people came to the house of God and remained there before God till evening. They lifted up their voices and wept bitterly and said, O Lord God of Israel, why has this come to pass in Israel, that today there should be one tribe missing in Israel? Okay, so also another point, in chapter 20, the children of Israel had to confirm everything with the Levitical priest, and the priest would confirm whether or not they should go to war with Benjamin. They still went through the process under the law of Moses to get confirmation or the okay from God that they can go to war against Benjamin, even though what Benjamin did was wicked. Okay, they still needed to have the priest make a burnt offering before God and get counsel from the Most High. Okay, so verse 4, it says, so it was on the next morning that the people rose early and built an altar there and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. The children of Israel said, "Who is there among all the tribes of Israel who did not come up with the assembly to the Lord?" For they had made a great oath concerning anyone who had not come up to the Lord at Mizpah, saying, "He shall surely be put to death." Meaning, if they came up there with them before the Lord, okay, they had the Ark of the Covenant. Meaning that person was sincerely repenting, or that person was showing that they had no hand in what the children of Benjamin did. Okay, because if they did have a hand in it, they would die. Okay, they were still under the law of sin and death. Okay, verse 6. And the children of Israel grieved for Benjamin, their brother, and said, "One tribe is cut off from Israel today. What shall we do for wives for those who remain, seeing we have sworn by the Lord that we will not give them our daughters as wives?" And they said, "What one is there from the tribes of Israel who did not come up to Mizpah to the Lord?" And in fact, no one had come up to the camp from Jabesh Gilead to the assembly. For when the people were counted, indeed, not one of the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead was there. So the congregation sent out there 12,000 of their most valiant men, and commanded them, saying, "Go and strike the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead with the edge of the sword, including the women and children." All right. I want you guys to, let's pause here and let's please pay attention to this. Ask yourselves, why would God have them kill the women and the children? Okay, this is something that's constant throughout most of the Old Testament. Okay, because later, under the regime of King Saul, God would command him to utterly destroy the Amalekites, including the women and children. Okay, I've talked about the serpent seed before. God consecrating the children of Israelite even among themselves, to where they had to destroy some of the Benjamites who were evil, even though that was their brethren. Okay, verse 11. And this is the thing that you should do. You shall utterly destroy every male and every woman who has known a man intimately. So they found among the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead 400 young virgins who had not known a man intimately, and they brought them to the camp at Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan. Now keep in mind, God went through all of this with Israel. You got to keep in mind, to sustain polygyny, the practice of polygyny, the Israelites, they raped, they murdered, they did incest, pedophilia. They did so many wicked things just to keep blood, because it was all about keeping the bloodlines pure at that time. Because later, Christ would be born of the tribe of Judah. And his mother was what? She was a virgin. You see that? So that was the whole purpose of polygyny. All right. And once Christ came into the earth, you didn't need the practice of polygyny anymore, because the bloodlines was even more tainted with sin. And you had no way of knowing who's from the tribe of where. Okay. Because now the bloodlines are mixed. You see all of this bloodshed that God committed, killing 26,000 Benjamites, killing 24,000 people, okay, because they had committed harlotry with the women of Moab. Why was it so significant that they stay away from the foreign women? Okay, to keep the bloodlines pure. That was the whole purpose of the practice of polygyny at that time. But it just got recessive. All right, the less and less virgin women, as you can see here in chapter 21. The Israelites are looking for those virgin women, and they're scarce. All right. Verse 12. So they found among the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead 400 young virgins who had not known a man intimately, and they brought them to the camp at Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan. Then the whole congregation sent word to the children of Benjamin who were at the rock of Rimmon, and announced peace to them. So Benjamin came back at that time, and they gave them the women whom they had saved alive of the women of Jabesh Gilead, and yet they had not found enough for them. And the people grieved for Benjamin, because the Lord had made a void in the tribes of Israel. Then the elders of the congregation said, "What shall we do for wives for those who remain, since the women of Benjamin have been destroyed?" And they said, "There must be an inheritance for the survivors of Benjamin, that a tribe may not be destroyed from Israel. However, we cannot give them wives from our daughters, for the children of Israel have sworn an oath, saying, Cursed be the one who gives a wife to Benjamin. Then they said, In fact, there is a yearly feast of the Lord in Shiloh, which is north of Bethel, on the east side of the highway that goes up from Bethel to Shechem and south of Lebanon. Therefore they instructed the children of Benjamin, saying, Go, lie in wait in the vineyards, and watch. And just when the daughters of Shiloh come out to perform their dances, then come out from the vineyards, and every man catch a wife for himself from the daughters of Shiloh, then go to the land of Benjamin. Okay, so they were going to perform forced entry on the women. You see that? Verse 22. Then it shall be when their fathers or their brothers come to us to complain, that we will say to them, Be kind to them for our sakes, because we did not take a wife for any of them in the war. For it is not as though you have given the women to them at this time, making yourselves guilty of your oath. Okay, because keep in mind the children of Israel, when they dealt with the foreign nations, sometimes they would take their wives as the spoils of war. Okay, and they would shave their wives' head and consecrate them for a period of time before going into them. Okay, but they didn't do this with Benjamin. Okay, so they're letting them know that this was of God. Okay, to purify the tribe of Benjamin. Verse 23, and the children of Benjamin did so. They took enough wives for their number from those who danced, whom they caught. Then they went and returned to their inheritance, and they rebuilt the cities and dwelt in them. So the children of Israel departed from there at that time, every man to his tribe and family. They went out from there, every man to his inheritance. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. All right. So in closing, this is the tribe of Benjamin, whom the apostle Paul descended from. Okay, this tribe with all of this sexual immorality. Remember, Paul wrote the laws for sexual immorality, and he's the one who said, because of sexual immorality, let every man have his own wife and every woman her own husband. Then he went on to say that he wished that all men were as himself. Why did he say that? I'm going to get more deeper into this in part 2. Okay. Paul was a eunuch. He's a descendant from the tribe of Benjamin. And Paul was also a Roman citizen. Okay. And we know how perverted the Romans were. So everywhere Paul went was perversion. So God gave him this revelation of why a man is to have one wife. Even within his own seed line, not only the Romans. Okay. Because you heard people talking about that was a Greco-Roman culture. No, within Paul's own bloodline, the Benjamites were perverted. All right. Now, as for King Saul, in 1 Samuel 10, Saul becomes king over Israel. Okay, I already established earlier in this video in 1 Samuel chapter 8, Saul was anointed king over Israel, and Samuel warned the Israelites of the wickedness that they had done in asking for a king over Israel. Okay, so now you're able to see that God was kind of thumbing his nose at the Israelites and dishonoring them, putting a curse over them, saying that, well, you're going to get your king from the tribe of Benjamin. Okay, which I already addressed in this video, all the wickedness that the Benjamites had done. Okay, Israel had to go to war with them and kill thousands of their men because they were sodomites. So in concluding this video, I'm just going to run through the 7 mistakes that King Saul made. Okay, because in part 2, I'm going to get more into the relation to the Apostle Paul and some of their similarities. Now, is he related to the Apostle Paul? I think there's a great chance that he was. Okay, but again, I'll get more into that in part 2. So, the first mistake that King Saul made was in 1 Samuel 13 when he made a burnt offering to God because he was afraid of the Philistines, that they would defeat him. The problem with that is that only the Levites were permitted to make burnt offerings to the Lord. The second mistake that he made was in 1 Samuel 14 because he failed to defeat the Philistines because he cursed the Israelites from eating anything until the Philistines were defeated. And the Israelites could have used a lot of strength from eating to defeat their enemies. Okay, and Jonathan also had mentioned this. Jonathan was the son of Saul. The third mistake he made was he refused to utterly destroy the Amalekites. God commanded him to destroy man and woman, infant and nursing child, ox and sheep, camel and donkey. Okay, he commanded this to King Saul in 1 Samuel 15. Now, some of you who have read the book of 1 Samuel, you may ask, why did God command King Saul to destroy the Amalekites, to utterly destroy them, but King David was able to take the spoil of war from the Amalekites? Okay, again, sin is regressive. The bloodlines were regressive. So once King Saul disobeyed, there was no turning back from integration. Okay, this is also why King David started taking some of the foreign women as wives. Okay, if you notice, King Saul didn't do that. King Saul, in his own mind, he thought that it was okay to take their animals and to take some of their livestock and leave the man alive, or leave some of the people alive, but don't utterly destroy them. But God wanted him to utterly destroy them because it was something in their bloodline that made them wicked. Okay, and those nations would be able to manipulate and persuade the children of Israel to turn away from their God. In addition to that, King Saul also made a monument for himself, so he became lifted up. Okay, the fourth mistake he made, I think, which was a big mistake, is he was the first king to start war within Israel as a king. Okay, he was using his throne to war against David. Okay, the scriptures say that David was king over Judah for about 7.5 years or so. Okay, this was because of King Saul. Once King Saul saw that David was anointed as king, really once he saw that he defeated Goliath and saw how the people was responding to David and favoring him over the king, that's when he started seeking for David's life. Even though his son and his daughter, they loved David. Okay. But the main thing here is that he started using a lot of his resources to go after David versus going after the Philistines. Okay, and then when David finally went into the stronghold of the Philistines, King Saul got comfortable. All right, and that left him vulnerable because David's men went with him. And most importantly, the favor of the Lord went with David. Okay, but this is how the Philistines was able to capture King Saul or corner him. The fifth mistake he made was probably the biggest mistake, or one of the biggest mistakes. In 1 Samuel 22, he commanded Dog, the Edomite, to kill the priest of the Lord. Okay, Saul was the first king to do this. Okay, well, he was the first king of Israel overall, but this was wicked. This was not something that David did. Solomon didn't do this. Many kings didn't do this. It was maybe only a handful that killed the priest of the Lord, or tried to kill the priest of the Lord. The sixth mistake he made was he consulted a medium in 1 Samuel 28. Okay, these are breaking the commandments of God, which says you should not consult a medium or a spiritist. You should not permit a sorcerer to live. Okay. Then finally, the seventh mistake that he made, in no particular order, was in 1 Samuel chapter 31. He took his own life. Okay. Or technically, he failed to take his own life, but he commanded another man to take his own life. And of course, the scriptures say, which is one of the laws of Moses, thou shalt not kill. Okay, that includes killing yourself or asking someone else to kill you. Okay, so this concludes part one of this series. There was a lot to cover. Was King Saul related to the Apostle Paul? Okay, we're going to discuss it further in part two. Until then, let me know your thoughts in the comments and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.